So we're going to start with Ecclesiastes 11, verse 2 and then verse 6. So the first one says, invest in 7 ventures, yes, and 8. You do not know what disasters may come upon the land. And in verse 6 says, sow your seed in the morning and at evening. Let your hand not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Godly Business Podcast. I am your host, Anne Jean-Pierre, and I'm very glad that you are here today because I wanted to share something with you that God shared with me in September when I was praying about where I wanted to be in my business and certain things I needed to focus on because I felt like I was being pulled in multiple directions. There were a lot of big decisions that I needed to make, like whether I needed to sell a property, whether I needed to, focus on this or that. So there was a lot of things going on. And I had to sit down and just write things down. And in doing so, God gave me multiple different verses for me to reflect on. And so today I want to share some of those verses. And I think it's funny because while I'm not going to go into all the verses that he gave me, right? To a lot of them came from Ecclesiastes 11 and Proverb 11, which the number 11, I guess, is doing something. I don't know. But I wanted to share with you guys 3 of the biggest takeaways that I got from everything that he told me that night. And I have the paperwork here. It's like 4 pages of notes that I wrote down in my prayer time. And I just want to share most of what I got out of that conversation. And I think it's something that would be very helpful. And I think if you are in business or if you're thinking about getting into business, some of the things that you should think about and what I was thinking was a priority was not a priority to God, right? So that's why I want to share with you today. So if this is your first time here, welcome. This channel is all about business, sales more specifically, and also how to do business in a godly way, hence the Godly Business Podcast, right? So we talk about business, sell tips, and godly principles. So if that is interesting to you and you find that fun on how to learn to grow your business, do your business, have the sales conversation, and do so in a godly way, this is the channel for you. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm just going to tell you what the 3 things that stood out for me when I was asking him exactly what it is that I need to do. The first thing he told me is to be generous. And I was like, okay, be generous, right? That was on multiple different facets and multiple different verses that he was giving me. And I thought that was funny today when I was doing my meditation. The verse that came about again was Proverb 11:25, right? About replenishing others. And when you do so, how you are also refreshed. And that's one of the verses that he brought to mind as well when I was doing, back in September, when I was, asking all these questions. The first thing he said was to be generous. And I think I'm going to just give you all 3 before I get into each one. So he said to be generous was the first thing. To invest. And I was like, invest where? I'm still waiting on that answer. But he said to invest. And then the other thing was, do not wait for the right time or the perfect time to invest, right? And so those are the main 3 things that I got out of the whole conversation with him. He gave me a bunch of other verses regarding discipline and things like that, which we can talk about another time. But today I want to talk about those three things: be investing, not waiting for the perfect time to invest, and being generous. So starting with the first one, right? And talking about being generous, because at first I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about all of these things I need to do for myself and all of the things that I have to get ready financially for the next season or of my family's life. And the first thing and the number one thing that God wanted me to address is being generous, having a heart for others. And I feel like a lot of times when we're thinking about in the prospect of thinking of wealth, we're thinking accumulating wealth for ourselves, right? And being a blessing to our family, being a blessing to our loved ones. But I think, at least for me, when I was thinking about him saying to be generous, in the sense of business, right, is more so, and not just being generous and like, hey, I'm going to be excellent at my things and whatever, right? Because that's what at first I was thinking of, like, okay, I'm going to go above and beyond for my prospects or my customers. I'm going to be generous with my time and things like that. But I think for me, what I got out of that conversation was, in being generous, we need to think of how can I serve beyond just, okay, my customers and my, I'm giving them more than they asked for and things like that, right? Because that's one of the first things we think about as far as being generous in our businesses. But it goes beyond that. Like, think about the big corporations and how they have foundations, right? And I know some people will say, yes, this is just so they can get tax benefits and things like that. But I think the principle of being generous and wealth goes hand in hand, because throughout Proverb 11, it talks a lot about giving to others, right? And I feel like the more you give, the more you receive. And we don't want to obviously just give in order for us to expect to receive. But just like we talked in business about, the more value you give, the more you can charge, right? The more the person can get out of this thing, the more value they see, then the more they're willing to pay. And I think it's also the same way as the more we pour out our hearts in helping others beyond just like, hey, I'm going to help out my clients. I'm going to help out my business partners because, they rub my back. I rub your back. I don't think it's where he's thinking about when it comes to being generous. Like, how are you giving back to your community? How are you giving back to people that you don't consider to be in your community through your business? Not just like, oh, Annie is going to donate, $500, $1,000 to this organization. But it's like, what else can my business do in order for me to show my generosity? So can your business do free workshops and help the community out in teaching them the skills that that clients pay for, right? In order for you to help your community. If you are a financial coach, maybe help by providing free sessions for people in domestic violence shelters, things like that. So thinking beyond just, hey, at least that's how I was thinking about it, right? I was thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give more in this area. And it's like, no, I want you to go beyond this little box that you're thinking of being generous. Like, oh yeah, I gave $5 to a homeless person. That's great. But how else can I give beyond these basic, like, oh, I'm just, So that was one of the things that he was stressing. And it's not just being generous with money, because I feel like a lot of time it's easy to just give money away. But what about your time? Right. And I know as entrepreneurs, especially if you're a solopreneur, your time is very, very valuable. So you're thinking like, I don't know, I could just give this money and just keep moving. But I think a lot of it too is the posture of our hearts, because I was realizing for me, I was tithing. When I give my tithe, I was giving it as an obligation, right? I'm writing a check. Okay, this is a 10%. I write the check. I send it in. I don't think about it. And I had to reflect on, if this is how I'm giving, that's not necessarily how God wants me to give. I'm not giving with my heart, right? It's like I'm paying a bill. I'm paying a light bill. There's no joy in it. There's no, like, I'm excited to do this, right? It's like, it's the light bill. It needs to get paid. I pay it. And that's how I was approaching tithing, right? I was approaching tithing as, okay, this is a 10%. Let me write the check and give it. And there's no heart in it, right? And I think the conversation for me was around my heart posture, the posture of my heart. Okay. And realizing that when I'm giving, if I'm giving as in like, hey, God, I'm giving this, are you tallying it up? You know, if I'm expecting something, then it's like I'm investing, not in the sense that I'm going to talk about, but it's like, hey, I'm putting this out and expecting something in return. And I don't think that's the posture that we should have as Christians. And also, and being generous, not to just think like, hey, you said 10%, I'm giving this 10% and going about my business. And then whatever else I do with my time or money is my concern, right? And that's how I was. That's how I was until that conversation. And I'm still working through that, right? But yeah, like, are you concerned? Are you like, hey, I hope this person is blessed. I hope how can I be more of a blessing to this person than just writing up a check, or like, hey, I'm going to volunteer at this place, check my little box of 1 hour, and then I'm good. So that was the first thing he wanted me to address in my conversation with him about, hey, what do I do in my business? How do I move about and making all these decisions? You know, and at first I was like, what does that have to do with the questions I'm asking? Right. But again, his will for us is not the same. He's not thinking of this now, right? It's all about his glory and eternal in the eternal life beyond this point. And a lot of the things that he's asking us for is for our own good, but also for renewing our heart, refreshing our heart, removing a heart of stone to put in a heart of flesh. So the first thing is to be generous. If you are stuck in your business and you're like, hey, I have no idea what I need to do, maybe look into that, because that's what he told me, is to be generous and not just write the check, but actually be in my heart, be generous, truly be generous in my heart, and be available to help others. So that was the first thing. The second thing he said was to invest, right? So the Proverbs was like, not the prophet, but Ecclesiastes says, sow your seed in the morning and in the evening, and let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed. Right. And then he said to invest in multiple ventures, 7, 8, because you don't know which disasters will strike the land, and you don't know which one will succeed. Which brings me into the second part, which I'm going to kind of talk about all together here, was not to wait to invest. So one of the things with, interest rate going up and the status of the economy, I was very, very reluctant to. I was going back and forth. Like, should I buy? Should I invest in this area? Should I do this and that? And I found myself just sitting for a little over a year not making a decision because I'm like, I want to wait and see what's going on. And so when I was praying and trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm trying to figure this out on my own. Like, God, like, what do I do? And that's the thing that he sent me to. It's like, do not wait for the perfect timing in order for me to try to figure it out. I just need to invest and not wait on the timing. Of course, you have to be smart. You have to ask for more wisdom, which I am asking for more wisdom. Right. At the same time, it's like you have to, what does that look like? Investing, right? Whether that's investing in your knowledge, right? Whether that's investing in better equipment, investing in hiring someone, investing in building up yourself. I think the message here is not to just stay idle, right? Not to just stay idle and thinking like when, waiting for the perfect time, because I know that's something that I struggle with a lot is like, I want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly before I press go. And it's like, most of the time that will never happen. And secondly, by the time everything is lined up perfectly, you would have missed so many opportunities because you are waiting for that perfect time. And so that's one of the things that I had to learn and I had to come to grips with and accept that, okay, not everything is going to be perfect. And I have to be okay with everything not being perfect, everything not being exactly how I would want it to be. And that's okay. And am I willing to take the risk of losing, right? Because I think fear is probably one of the biggest things that I have to work through. And I feel like a lot of, if you're a coach in any capacity, I'm sure this is one of the conversation you probably have a lot with people. And I feel like fear is probably one of the biggest obstacles that we face in business. Fear of whether I should invest more in this area because it's failing, or whether I should, do X, Y, Z. I think fear is probably one of the biggest contributor to us not getting to where we would like to be and being hesitant. And so for me, that's one of the hardest thing that I had to overcome. And for him to let me know, like, you just need to go. You just need to go. You just need to do. And this may not work for everyone, right? I'm just sharing the things that I have learned, the things that he has put in my heart, and maybe it resonates with you. Because for some of you guys, he may be saying, hey, yo, hold up, especially if you like pull the trigger type personality. But for me, in that time, he was saying, like, you cannot just wait for the perfect storm, for the perfect everything in order for you to move forward. So for me, I had to learn to go ahead and invest, not just invest in myself, right? Invest in myself in learning the knowledge, invest in getting help, right? Because that's a whole nother subject, but in getting help, I think, for me, I love my intern. She is amazing, but I also had to learn how to better communicate, right? So investing that time to learn how to do that, investing that time to learn how to look for help, when to look for help, what it looks like to have a structure that works in order for me to get the help, right? So that's an investment, right? Investing in getting the proper equipment, the proper software, all of those things. So I still have a lot more questions for God, obviously, but those are the three things that he told me was to, one, be generous, to invest, and not to wait. And not to wait for the perfect time to do so. So I hope this was helpful, and that you learned something today. I hope that you are willing, able, and encouraged to go ahead and be generous, to go ahead and give, but not give as in like I was doing, like just writing up the check and just be like, okay, I'm done, responsibility taken care of, right? But to really look at your heart when you are doing so and see what other ways that you could be a blessing and do so not as a burden or like, oh, I have to do this, but teach God to renew your heart when it comes to that matter of being generous, because generosity is linked to wealth. The second thing is to invest in the market, invest in your business, invest in whatever God puts in your heart to invest in. Do not wait for the perfect timing. Of course, pray. He will tell you. But at least for me, it was do not wait for things to be perfect in order for you to go and do the things that you want and need to do. And then that's it for me, you guys. I hope this was a blessing. Of course, if you have questions, concern, leave a comment below. But of course, the main person to always ask is God, because he will teach you, guide you, and lead you in the way that you should go. And remember, because he is your shepherd, you lack absolutely nothing. All right, you guys. So I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Have a blessed day.